A great party bustled in Berlin as news had spread that the Germans, by a combination of well-trained generals and disciplined soldiers, had just taken Paris. I speak of the end of the Franco-Prussian War. The architect behind this great conflict was Otto von Bismarck. Now, over 150 million people have been killed in wars. That is half the population of the USA, almost the whole planet when Jesus of Nazareth was born. That is the low end. Other estimates of this number go to 1 billion, which is the whole population of the planet in the year 1800. What's worse, this is war, so it doesn't even include socio-political events like non-natural famines or specific rebellions. Of this massive sum, 20% was reaped in the previous century alone. That's quite a disproportion. The World Wars, I think we all know, was a major contributor to this hefty number. Given the waste of human life, I think it would be interesting to look into Bismarck, as his era is what contextualized 1919 and 1939. The 1800s was an explosion in innovation. Automobiles, cameras, the telegraph and telephone, typewriters. There was also the great conquest of Napoleon Bonaparte, the finalization of colonialism, and notably, the German Empire, the Italian peninsula, and Austria all came to greater unity within themselves, both literally and politically. Italian unification and Austrian stabilization were two different stories, but the mastermind behind German unity was Otto von Bismarck. This is how he wrote the final chapter in a story of success that is Germany, and how he almost stopped the century of atrocities that would follow. In his first step for unification, he had to destroy the chances of Prussia's rival as the candidate for German unification, Austria. In Germany at the time, these tiny states were all independent, looking for one sovereign government to call a leader. Everyone knew that the two candidates for this spot was Austria and Prussia. Knowing that this conflict would be inevitable, Bismarck declared war on Austria for the upper hand, and thus he became the more appealing major force to the northern German states. And with a victory against Austria, he then went to get southern Germany by declaring war on France. With Prussia's military expertise, they punched their way to the French defenses and took Paris. The generals were ecstatic. They had defeated France and immediately took action to reap the spoils. But by the end of the peace conference, the only transfer was this little region which had a high German population already. Much to the dismay of the military, Otto von Bismarck decided to not take any of the northern lands of France, just the border region of Alsace-Lorraine. The German people started to have a bad view of Bismarck. Not unexpected in a militarist nationalist state, but regardless, he was the architect behind German unity and the victory against France, so he earned the respect of his king and his subjects. So why, you ask, did he not completely destroy France? Well, Bismarck knew that if they took too much land and demanded too many reparations, France would have been too crippled to forget about the event. They would never settle for a long peace with Germany. By only taking a little, sure, the French would still be upset, but with some good diplomacy, the stage was possible for long-term peace. Now, Germany is unified and powerful, and with Italy also having unified not too long ago, the European stage looked like this. In this context, any conflict would mean war with a major power, an expensive and less desirable endeavor for just a little bit of land. But in addition, it would receive the condemnation of neighbors and those overseas. That is why total annexation of a nation was not justifiable. The last time there was a common enemy that took sovereignty over all of Europe, well, the world was not going to repeat that. Now this policy, Bismarck's plan, was known as the balance of power. You've probably heard of it before. Other examples of him executing this plan lie in his decision in administering the Berlin Conference. Bismarck was against having overseas territories, not just because he believed they were a waste of time and money, but because he wanted to use this conference to appease and be friendly to the neighboring nations, to buy and to grant favors here or there, and thus increase the probability of peace. Unfortunately for Africa, the well-being of the colonized was not on Bismarck's list of priorities. However, he did set the stage for long-term peace. But just 10 years after the finalization of the plan, the world erupted into the greatest war it had ever seen thus far. So why didn't it work? Well, there was one thing that Bismarck wasn't planning for, which was the early death of the emperor. You see, the first king was Wilhelm. His first and only son reigned for only 1 year. When he was replaced by Wilhelm II, Otto von Bismarck's plans all went awry. Wilhelm II was an extreme nationalist, and he had his own agenda. His list of plans included building a massive navy with dozens of battleships and hundreds of warships in total. Bismarck knew this would anger the British, who were not fond of those who did not respect their sovereignty over the seas. Wilhelm wanted to support Austria-Hungary's expansionist claims in the Balkans. Bismarck knew that this would alienate Russia, who were just recently on friendlier terms with Germany. Wilhelm hated the French, and he wanted to rub their defeat in the Franco-Prussian War into their faces. Obviously, Bismarck turned down this deal, and in response, Wilhelm did the unthinkable. He fired Otto von Bismarck, probably the most professional diplomat and statesman in history. In the process, Wilhelm angered Italy, Russia, and Britain. When Bismarck left, he told Wilhelm that if you continue down this path, 20 years after my death, everything will fall apart. Otto von Bismarck passed away in 1898. Exactly 20 years after this date, Germany would sign the armistice with the Entente. Somehow, prophetically, Bismarck had predicted the fall of Germany on the spot. And so, as most of us know, the Triple Entente decided to demand crazy reparations, crippling the German economy, starving their people, and goading them into following a genocidal dictator. And thus another war came just 20 years after the devastation of the first. Even worse, the Entente didn't try to keep stability and satisfaction in their neighbors either, something Bismarck knew how to do. The Allies gave Italy less than what was promised, and so they joined the Axis. When the Russian Civil War raged, the Entente did nothing, and so dawned the Soviets. Maybe if Bismarck got his way, none of this would have happened. Thanks for watching. And if you want to learn more about Otto von Bismarck, check out the links in the description below. And check out some of my other videos, some educational for you sleep-deprived high schoolers, or if you just want to learn some cool history.